The car sold on a Tuesday morning in November. A 2019 Ferrari 488 GP. Rosso Corsa Red. Every option on the build sheet. The kind of car that turns heads at traffic lights and makes other drivers forget where they were going. Marcus stood in the dealer's parking lot and watched them drive away without saying a word. He had 2 receipts in his jacket pocket. One from the sale, one from the grocery store the evening before. $47.82 for a week of food for him and his daughter. He chose the groceries. 2-second pause. He always would. The apartment on Birchwood Avenue was the third one Marcus and Isla had lived in since the divorce, and the first one that had started to feel like home. Not because of the furniture. The furniture was borrowed and mismatched and included a kitchen table with one leg that had been repaired twice with hardware store brackets that Marcus had measured and installed with a precision that was slightly excessive for the task. It felt like home because of the corner near the window where Isla had arranged her things. She was 7 years old and had her mother's stubborn streak and her father's eyes. Dark, still, the kind that watched more than they revealed. She kept 3 things on her windowsill. A small potted cactus she had named Gerald. A smooth gray stone she had found on a beach in California this summer before everything changed. And a photograph, taken at a racetrack somewhere in Italy, of a man standing beside a car he had designed, squinting into the sun with his hand on the hood, the way a person touches something they built from nothing. She had never asked Marcus about the photograph. He had never explained it. That morning she was sitting cross-legged on the kitchen table, not at it, on it, eating cereal with the focused attention of someone performing a task that required full concentration. Cactus Gerald had been moved from the windowsill to beside her bowl, which meant she wanted company. Marcus set her school bag by the door and checked the time. "Is a Ferrari faster than a cheetah?" she asked, not looking up from her cereal. He stopped what he was doing. At top speed, he said carefully, "Yes. A cheetah runs about 70 miles per hour. A Ferrari can do over 200. Isla considered this for a moment, her spoon suspended. "How do you know that?" "I know a lot about Ferraris," Marcus said. She looked at him then, with the particular directness of a 7-year-old who has not yet learned to look away from things that interest her. "Did you ever drive one?" There was a pause that lasted slightly longer than a normal pause. "Once or twice," he said. He tied her shoes before the neighbor came to take her to school. The double knot was the same every morning. Not too tight. Not loose enough to come undone mid-stride. He had once, in a different life, spent 3 weeks running computational stress tests on a suspension component designed to perform within tolerances of 0.003 millimeters. The knot in his daughter's shoelace received the same quality of attention. He watched her go down the hallway. Then he put on his work jacket, navy blue, Harmon Automotive embroidered on the chest, and went to the factory floor. Harmon Automotive occupied a 40-acre campus on the edge of the city that had been built in phases over 22 years, each phase slightly more ambitious than the last. It was a serious company. $3.4 billion in annual revenue. Operations in 9 countries. A motorsport division that had placed in the top 3 of the Continental Championship 4 times in the last 6 years. Never first, always close, always with the particular frustration of an organization that had every resource except the one insight that separated second place from first. CEO Diana Harmon had inherited the company from her father at 36 and had grown it with a combination of financial precision and territorial instinct that the industry respected even when it did not particularly like her. She had very specific ideas about who belonged where. Marcus had joined the factory floor 8 months ago. His application listed experience in automotive manufacturing, a decade of engineering work at various firms, and a 2-year gap he listed as personal leave. The hiring manager had processed him without particular interest. He had been assigned to the assembly line on level 2, the area responsible for drivetrain components. The work was precise and physical and suited him in the way that all mechanical work suited him. It required him to be completely present, and being completely present meant not thinking about the other things. His colleagues knew him as quiet, competent, and slightly difficult to read. He fixed things that weren't assigned to him. He caught tolerancing errors that the floor supervisors missed. He occasionally stood at the edge of the upper walkway during his lunch break, looking down at the Motorsport Division's prototype bays with an expression nobody could quite name. The floor supervisor, a man named Carl, had mentioned him twice in weekly reports to the engineering department. Both times nothing had come of it. 6 weeks before the Continental Championship, the Motorsport Division hit a wall. The new prototype, the H7, Harmon's most technically ambitious racing car, was underperforming on exit acceleration. The data was consistent and the cause was not. 3 senior engineers had worked the problem for 11 days across 2 continents. The numbers improved slightly and then returned to baseline. The race was 9 weeks out. Diana Harmon called a full engineering review on a Thursday morning. 12 people in the room. Slide decks. Simulation data. A tension in the air that had been building for days. Marcus was not in that room. He was on the factory floor, installing a differential housing with a methodical focus he brought to everything. But he had heard the numbers. Engineers talk. Tolerances travel. And Marcus had looked at the H7 twice from the upper walkway, looked at it the way his daughter looked at things that interested her, directly and without apology, and he had seen something. That evening, after his shift, he wrote 4 pages of notes in a small notebook he kept in his jacket pocket. Calculations. Observations. A proposed modification to the rear diffuser geometry that would take 11 hours to implement and cost less than $800 in materials. He left the notebook on the chief engineer's desk with a sticky note that had his name and floor badge number on it. Nothing happened for 4 days. On the 5th day, Diana Harmon walked onto level 2 and found him at his station. She did not come to thank him. She came to tell him that factory floor employees did not submit engineering proposals to senior staff. That the chain of communication existed for a reason. That if he had concerns about his work assignment, there was an HR process for that. She said all of this in front of his colleagues. Marcus listened to every word. He did not interrupt. He did not look away. And when she finished, he said one sentence, quietly, without heat. The diffuser modification I described would recover 0.4 seconds per lap on exit. That's the difference between second place and first. But I understand. Diana Harmon stared at him. She had no idea who Marcus Cole really was. And what happened next is the reason the H7 exists at all. Diana Harmon did not fire him that day. She did something that surprised even her. She sent the notebook to her head of engineering with a single instruction. Check it. The head of engineering, a methodical German named Klaus Brand who had worked in motorsport for 31 years and was not easily impressed by anything, read the 4 pages in 20 minutes. Then he read them again. Then he called Diana Harmon's office and said 4 words she had not expected. Who is this man? The answer took 3 days to fully surface. Marcus Cole had not always worked factory floors. 12 years earlier, he had been the lead powertrain engineer at Valero Racing, a boutique Italian motorsport firm that had produced some of the most technically sophisticated privateer racing cars of the previous decade. He had not been the loudest voice in any room at Valero, but he had been the most accurate one. Engines he designed won 3 consecutive endurance championships. A rear diffuser geometry he developed, under patent under his name, had been licensed by 4 competing manufacturers and was currently in use on vehicles competing in 2 separate international series. One of those manufacturers was Harmon Automotive. They had licensed the patent 6 years ago. The licensing agreement was in a filing cabinet 2 floors above the factory line, where Marcus spent his days installing differential housings. His name was in their own records. Nobody had looked. The divorce had come during the peak of it. His wife had left during a period when Marcus had been traveling 11 months of 12, when their daughter Isla was 4 years old and growing up in photographs he received by text in hotel rooms in Maranello and Silverstone and Sepping. He had made his choice. He sold the Ferrari, the one he had bought the year Valero won their first championship, sold the apartment, took Isla, and disappeared from the industry entirely. Not because he couldn't handle the work, but because a paddock in Maranello and a 7-year-old in Birchwood Avenue are not compatible in the way that matters most. He had taken a factory job because it was close to Isla's school. He had written the notebook because he could not look at a solvable problem and walk away from it. Klaus Brandt presented the full picture to Diana Harmon on a Tuesday afternoon. She sat across the desk from him without speaking for a long moment after he finished. Then she made a decision that she would later describe as the most straightforward decision she had made in years, and also the most overdue. The H7 was modified according to Marcus's specifications over 11 hours on a Saturday night. Marcus did the work himself. Klaus Brandt stood beside him for the first 3 hours and did not speak much, which was how Klaus expressed approval. Two junior engineers watched from a careful distance, learning things that were not in any training manual. The first test lap ran the following Monday morning. The exit acceleration data came back 0.38 seconds faster per lap. Klaus looked at the number on the screen, then at Marcus, and said, in the particular tone of a man who has spent 31 years being precise about language, "You said 0.4. Marcus looked at the data. Track temperature is 2 degrees lower than the model. Run it again this afternoon. The afternoon run came back at 0.41. Klaus did not say anything that time. He simply nodded once, the way people nod when a thing they suspected turns out to be true. The Continental Championship ran 6 weeks later. The H7 qualified second. It finished first. The margin at the line was 0.3 seconds, the closest finish in the race's history. Marcus watched it on a laptop in the apartment on Birchwood Avenue, sitting beside Isla on the couch, her head against his arm, Gerald the cactus on the coffee table. When the car crossed the line, Isla looked up at him. "Is that the car you fixed?" she asked. "Yes," he said. She looked back at the screen, where the winning car was doing a slow lap with the checkered flag draped over it. "I can see your diffuser thing from here," she said seriously. Marcus looked at her for a moment. Then he laughed. A real one, the kind that comes from somewhere that has been quiet for a long time, and put his arm around her, and they watched the celebration together in the warm light of the apartment that had started. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Harmon Automotive letterhead. Board of Directors. It was not a long letter. It did not need to be. It said that the board had reviewed the circumstances of the H7 development, the licensing history, and the current leadership structure of the motorsport division. It said that Diana Harmon had recused herself from the relevant portion of the board discussion. And it said that the position of Chief Executive Officer of Harmon Automotive Motorsport Division was being offered to Marcus Cole, effective at his discretion. Marcus read it twice at the kitchen table. Isla was at school. Gerald the cactus was on the windowsill. The photograph of the man standing beside the car in Italy was still there too, catching the morning light. He folded the letter carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. Then he picked up his phone and called the one number on the letter. Diana Harmon answered on the second ring. There was a silence between them that held everything that needed to be acknowledged without either of them having to say it directly. "I owe you an apology," she said. "More than one." "Yes," Marcus said. Not unkindly, just accurately. Another silence. "Will you consider it?" she asked. Marcus looked at the photograph on the windowsill, at the man squinting into the Italian sun with his hand on the hood of something he had built from nothing. "I'll consider it," he said. "I need to talk to someone first." He picked Isla up from school that afternoon, and they walked home the long way, through the park, the way they did when something needed space around it. He told her about the letter the way he told her most important things, simply, without making it bigger than it was. She walked beside him for a full minute without saying anything. Then she looked up. "Will you still be home for dinner?" she asked. Marcus looked down at her. "Every night," he said. She nodded, satisfied, and took his hand. "Then say yes," she said. Marcus Cole started as CEO of Harmon Automotive Motorsport Division on the first Monday of the following month. His office was on the 4th floor. It had a view of the prototype bays below, the same bays he had looked at from the upper walkway during lunch breaks for 8 months, with an expression his colleagues had never quite been able to name. He put 3 things on his desk: a photo of Isla, a small potted cactus, Gerald's twin, a housewarming gift from Isla that she had presented with great ceremony the night before, and a 4-page notebook slightly worn at the edges. The first thing he did was call Klaus Brandt. The second thing he did was leave at 5:30, on time, the same as always, to be home for dinner. Marcus Cole never went back for the Ferrari. He didn't need to. The car he had spent the last 8 months quietly helping to build had just won the most competitive race in the division's history. And the most important thing he owned was not in any showroom or parking lot. It was sitting at a kitchen table on Birchwood Avenue, eating cereal with a cactus named Gerald for company, asking questions about cheetahs. If this story stayed with you, it's because you already know what Marcus knew standing in that dealer's parking lot watching the red car disappear. That the most valuable thing a person can build has nothing to do with what they drive. Subscribe, because every week we tell the stories of the people who chose what mattered most.